Welcome to another deep dive. Today we are going to be checking out Java Cookbook, 5th edition, and we're going to go chapter by chapter and, hopefully give you a sense of what's in this book so you don't have to read the whole thing yourself.
That sounds good to me. I always love a good cookbook.
Me too. So this is all about giving you practical solutions to common Java development challenges, and they call these solutions recipes.
It makes sense.
It does. Now, let's get cooking with chapter 1, getting started.
Sounds good. I'm ready to get started.
Okay, so right off the bat, they advocate for using the latest Java versions, like Java 21.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, and they kind of make it clear that sticking with older versions like, the beloved Java 8 could actually be holding you back.
That's an interesting take. I think a lot of people are still using Java 8, so that might ruffle some feathers.
Yeah, it might, but I think they make a good case for moving forward and embracing the new features and improvements.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear more about that.
Well, they then kind of go into the basics of using command line tools, which is, the very foundations
Yeah.
with Java, and jar. And for someone who's brand new to Java, this could be like their first hands-on experience.
Right. Yeah, it's important to understand those fundamentals before you can really dive into the more complex stuff.
Totally. And, even for experienced developers, I think it's a good reminder that sometimes the command line is just the most straightforward way to get things done.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes the simplest tools are the best.
Yeah. And speaking of straightforward, they also highlight the importance of JavaDoc.
Oh, yeah. JavaDoc is so crucial for documentation and understanding how to use code.
For sure. Like if you're working on a team or even just for yourself, months down the line, it's so helpful to have clear documentation of what your code is actually doing.
Totally. And they actually practice what they preach by including plenty of code snippets in the book to illustrate the concepts.
Yeah, it's like they're saying, don't just tell me, show me.
Exactly. And, sometimes seeing a real example can make all the difference in understanding how something works.
Absolutely. Okay, so they also touch on multi-release jars.
Multi-release jars, what are those?
So these are pretty cool. They let you package code for different Java versions all in one archive.
Oh, wow. So you could have one jar that works across different environments.
Precisely. Yeah. It's a real time saver for developers who need to support, legacy systems while also taking advantage of the latest Java features.
That's really clever.
And then they touch upon, system properties, package naming conventions, the class path environment variable.
Oh, yeah. All the essential ingredients for a well-structured Java project.
Right. It's all about laying the groundwork for a solid and organized project.
Makes sense. So we've got the basics covered. Now what?
Now things start to get really interesting. Chapter 2 jumps into build tools and IDEs.
Ooh, okay, the heavy hitters of Java development.
Yeah, so we're introduced to the Java Platform Module System, or JPMS.
JPMS, I haven't heard of that one.
Yeah, it's all about modularity in Java development, which it seems like it's the way of the future.
Modularity is definitely a hot topic in software development these days.
It is, and for good reason. Breaking down your code into reusable components just makes it so much easier to manage and maintain large projects.
Right. It's like having prefabricated building blocks for your application.
Exactly. And to help you manage those building blocks, we have our trusty build tools like Maven and Gradle.
Ah, yes. Maven and Gradle, the unsung heroes of the Java world.
They really are. They handle all the tedious tasks of dependency management, compiling code, running tests, and packaging up the final product.
It's amazing how much they automate and free up our time to focus on the actual coding.
And if you're working with legacy code, they introduced this tool called Open Rewrite.
Open Rewrite. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, it can help automatically upgrade your code to newer Java versions.
Oh, wow. That could be a huge time saver.
It is, yeah, especially if you have a large code base that needs to be modernized.
Right. Imagine trying to manually update hundreds of files to a new Java version. It would be a nightmare.
Yeah, and not only that, but Open Rewrite can help you do it in a safe and reliable way, minimizing the risk of introducing new bugs.
That's really important.
It is. And speaking of reliability, the chapter then dives into unit testing with Unit.
Unit testing is so crucial for ensuring that your code actually works as intended.
It is, and they emphasize the importance of writing tests early and often catching bugs before they become major problems.
Absolutely. A stitch in time saves 9, as they say.
Exactly. And then to make your testing even more robust, we have mocking frameworks like Mockito.
Ah, yes. Mocking is a powerful technique for isolating the code you're testing from external dependencies.
Right. It allows you to create these controlled scenarios where you can test specific units of code without worrying about how they interact with other parts of the system.
It's like creating a virtual sandbox for your tests.
Exactly. And then they move on to logging frameworks like SLF4j and Log4j, which are essential for understanding what's happening inside your application.
Logging is so important for debugging and troubleshooting. It's like having a trail of breadcrumbs that you can follow to figure out what went wrong.
And it's not just for debugging, it can also help you monitor the performance of your application, track down bottlenecks, and get insights into how your code behaves in real-world scenarios.
Right. Logging can give you a wealth of information about your application if you know how to use it effectively.
Absolutely. And then they touch on continuous integration tools like Jenkins.
Ah, yes, continuous integration, the cornerstone of modern software development.
Right. Jenkins helps automate the process of building, testing, to deploying your Java applications, ensuring that you can release new features quickly and reliably.
Continuous integration is all about streamlining the development process and reducing the risk of errors.
And then they wrap up the chapter with two really cool tools, JLink and JPackage.
I'm intrigued. What do those do?
So JLink helps you create custom JDK distributions, which can significantly reduce the size of your application, making it more lightweight and portable.
Oh, wow, that sounds useful, especially for applications that need to be deployed in resource-constrained environments.
Exactly. And then JPackage takes it a step further. It helps you package your application into platform-specific installers, making it super easy for users to install and run your software.
So it's like taking your Java application and wrapping it up in a nice little gift box ready to be delivered to users.
Exactly. JPackage streamlines the installation process, making it a breeze for users.
That's awesome. I'm definitely going to check out those tools.
All right, so moving on to Chapter 3, Strings and Things.
Ah, yes, a string's the bread and butter of any programming language.
They really are. We use strings for everything from storing text to representing data to interacting with users.
And Java provides a rich set of tools for working with strings.
It does, but one thing that can trip people up is the fact that Java strings are immutable.
Immutable. What does that mean?
It means that once you create a string, its content cannot be changed. If you want to modify a string, you have to create a new one.
Oh, I see. So it's like working with a piece of marble. Once you've carved it, you can't really change its shape. You have to start with a new block.
Exactly, and while that might seem limiting, at first it actually brings some advantages in terms of performance and thread safety.
I can see how that would be the case. So how do you modify strings then if they're immutable?
Well, that's where the string builder class comes in handy. It allows for efficient string manipulation without the immutability restrictions of regular strings.
So it's like having a scratch pad where you can experiment with different string combinations before committing to the final result.
Exactly, and the chapter covers all sorts of common string operations like formatting with java.util, formatter, processing individual characters, aligning strings, and converting between cases.
It's like a toolbox full of string manipulation gadgets.
And to make our applications truly global, they introduced resource bundles for internationalization.
Ah, yes, internationalization, making our applications speak different languages and adapt to different cultures.
Right, it's essential for reaching a wider audience and creating software that feels native to users around the world.
I completely agree. Internationalization is so important in today's globalized world.
And then to add a touch of spice to our string handling skills, they finish off the chapter with an introduction to regular expressions.
Regular expressions, those powerful but sometimes cryptic tools for pattern matching and text manipulation.
They can be a bit daunting at first, but once you understand their syntax, they can be incredibly useful for tasks like data validation, parsing, and text extraction.
They're like a secret weapon for any programmer who needs to wield the power of text manipulation.
All right, moving on to Chapter 4, which, it's all about pattern matching with regular expressions.
So we're diving deeper into the world of regular expressions.
We are. They go into more detail about the syntax and show you how to apply regular expressions to solve real-world problems.
I'm always up for a good regex challenge.
Well, get ready for it because they cover everything from compiling patterns to matching text to extracting groups and even replacing text using regular expressions.
It's like taking a master class in regular expression.
It is. They really demystify these powerful tools and show you how to use them effectively.
Awesome. I'm excited to learn more.
Okay, so Chapter 5, Numbers. Now, this might seem like a pretty basic topic, but
Numbers are everywhere in programming.
they are. But it's not just about adding and subtracting. They delve into the nuances of how numbers are represented and manipulated in Java.
I can see how that could be tricky, especially when you start dealing with different number types and precision.
Exactly. They cover things like converting strings to numbers, handling different number types, and understanding the potential pitfalls of floating point comparisons.
Right. Floating point numbers can be notorious for their rounding errors.
They can, and they introduce some useful classes for formatting numbers like number format and decimal format.
Oh yeah, those are handy for displaying numbers in a human-readable way, like with commas for thousands, separators, and decimal places.
And they even show you how to create a custom Roman numeral formatter just for fun.
Roman numerals in Java. That's interesting. I guess it just goes to show that you can do just about anything with Java if you put your mind to it.
And to round off the chapter, they introduced the Vector API, which can significantly boost the performance of numerical computations.
The Vector API, that sounds interesting. What's that all about?
It's a relatively new addition to Java, and it leverages the capabilities of modern hardware to perform operations on multiple data elements simultaneously.
So it's like parallel processing for numbers.
Exactly. It can lead to significant performance gains for computationally intensive applications.
That's awesome. I'm always looking for ways to speed up my code.
All right, now moving on to a topic that's often a pain point for Java developers, Chapter 6, Dates and Times.
Dates and times, they can be such a headache to work with.
They can be, but thankfully Java has come a long way since the old clunky date and time APIs.
Oh, thank goodness. So what's the new and improved way of handling dates and times in Java?
The chapter introduces the modern Java.time API, which is a breath of fresh air compared to the old APIs.
Tell me more.
Well, it's much more intuitive, consistent, and easier to use. It provides a comprehensive set of classes for representing dates, times, durations, and time zones.
So no more wrestling with calendar and date.
Not if you're using the Java.time API. They walk you through the key classes like zone date time, local date time, and datetime formatter, showing you how to handle time zones, format dates and times, and parse date and time strings.
Sounds like a much more pleasant experience.
It is, and for those who still have to deal with legacy code, they provide guidance on converting between the old and new APIs.
That's a lifesaver for those of us who work with mixed-stage code bases.
And they also introduce temporal adjusters, which are powerful tools for manipulating dates and times based on specific rules.
Temporal adjusters. Can you give me an example of how you might use one?
Sure, let's say you need to calculate the last Thursday of a month. With a temporal adjuster, you can express that rule easily and apply it to any given date without having to write complex logic yourself.
That's pretty neat. It's like having a set of specialized date and time tools at your disposal.
Exactly. And then Chapter 7, Data Structures. This is where we explore the fundamental building blocks of organizing and managing data in Java.
Ah, yes, data structures, the containers that hold our precious data.
We're talking about arrays, lists, sets, maps, and queues.
All the essential ingredients for building complex applications.
And Java provides this wonderful thing called the collections framework.
Oh, yes, the collections framework, a treasure chest of data structures.
It offers a wide range of interfaces and classes for working with collections of objects.
It's so powerful and flexible you can find the perfect data structure for just about any need.
And to ensure type safety and avoid those nasty casting errors, they emphasize the use of generics.
Generics are like labels on our data containers. They tell us exactly what type of objects they hold.
Exactly, they make our code more readable, less error-prone, and just generally more enjoyable to work with.
Totally, and they don't just stop at the abstract concepts, they delve into specific implementations of these data structures.
Right, so you get to see how things like ArrayList, linked list, hash set, hash map, and tree map actually work under the hood.
It's fascinating to see how these different data structures are implemented and how their performance characteristics vary.
And they cover advanced techniques like sorting collections, searching for specific elements, and iterating over collections.
It's like a masterclass in data manipulation.
Okay, so we've covered the building blocks of data. Now it's time to move on to the principles of organizing code, Chapter 8, Object-Oriented Techniques.
Ah, yes, object-oriented programming, the foundation of modern software development.
It is this chapter dives deep into the core concepts of OOP, like inheritance, encapsulation, polymorphism, and interfaces.
These concepts are so important for building modular, reusable, and maintainable code.
Right, it's like building software with Lego bricks, where each brick represents a self-contained unit of functionality that can be combined with others to create complex structures.
I love that analogy, and they do a great job of explaining each of these concepts with clear examples and practical applications.
They also introduce some more advanced techniques like copy constructors, inner classes, and abstract classes.
It's like adding some specialized tools to our OOP toolbox.
Exactly, and to help us avoid reinventing the wheel, they introduce design patterns.
Design patterns, those time-tested solutions to common software design problems.
They're like blueprints for building robust and maintainable software.
It's always good to learn from the experience of others, and design patterns provide a wealth of knowledge and best practices.
Absolutely, and they cover two classic design patterns, the singleton pattern and the factory pattern.
Ah, yes. The singleton ensuring that there's only one instance of a particular class, and the factory providing a way to create objects without specifying their concrete classes.
And to keep things modern, they introduced Java records, which are a concise way to define simple data classes.
Records are awesome. They eliminate so much boilerplate code and make it easier to work with data.
They do, and finally they wrap up the chapter with sealed interfaces.
Sealed interfaces, I'm not familiar with those.
They're a relatively new feature in Java, and they provide a way to restrict the inheritance hierarchy of an interface ensuring that only specific classes can implement it.
Oh, I see. So it's a way to control how interfaces are extended and prevent unintended implementations.
Exactly. It helps enforce a stricter level of type safety and makes your code more predictable.
That's really interesting. I'll have to check those out.
All right, now let's shift gears a bit and explore a different paradigm of programming. Chapter 9, Functional Programming.
Ah, yes. Functional programming, a paradigm that's been gaining a lot of traction in recent years.
It has, and Java has embraced this trend by introducing features that support functional programming concepts.
It's a different way of thinking about programming, focusing on immutability, pure functions, and the composition of functions.
Exactly. It's a shift from a more imperative style of programming to a more declarative style.
And Java provides some key ingredients for functional programming, like functional interfaces and lambda expressions.
Lambda expressions, those concise arrow-based syntax constructs that have become so popular.
They're like little snippets of code that can be passed around as arguments to methods.
Exactly, and functional interfaces provide the framework for defining these lambda expressions.
It's like a match made in heaven.
And once you've grasped the basics of functional interfaces and lambda expressions, they introduce the powerful world of streams.
Ah, yes. Streams a way to process collections of data in a functional and efficient manner.
They allow you to express operations like filtering, mapping, and reducing data in a declarative style, often using a single concise statement.
It's so elegant and powerful, it can do amazing things with streams.
They also introduce method references, which are a shorthand way to refer to existing methods.
Method references are like aliases for methods, making your code even more compact and readable.
And then they touch on reactive programming.
Reactive programming, a paradigm that's all about building systems that react to events as they happen.
Right, it's about creating applications that are responsive, resilient, and scalable.
Reactive programming can be a bit mind-bending at first, but it's a powerful tool for building modern event-driven systems.
Okay, so we've explored the world of functional programming. Now let's get down to brass tacks with Chapter 10, Input and Output, Reading, Writing, and Directory Tricks.
Input and output, the essential ingredients for interacting with the outside world.
This chapter is all about mastering the art of file and directory manipulation in Java.
We're talking about reading and writing text files, creating and deleting directories, and managing file permissions.
All the essential skills for any Java developer who needs to work with the file system.
And they start by introducing the modern Java NIO API, which is a much more streamlined and efficient way to handle files and directories compared to the older java.io package.
NIO stands for New I/O, and it really lives up to its name.
It does. It provides a more modern and flexible approach to file I/O with features like channels, buffers, and selectors.
They show you how to perform all sorts of common operations like reading and writing files line by line, reading an entire file into memory, copying files, and working with zip files.
It's like a comprehensive toolbox for file manipulation.
And for those who need even finer grain control, they cover the traditional approaches with buffered reader, buffered writer, and lower level options like file input stream and file output stream.
So you've got all the bases covered.
And they also cover techniques for working with directories like listing their contents, creating new directories, and managing file permissions.
It's like having a complete guide to navigating the file system.
And to round off the chapter, they introduce the scanner class, which is a handy tool for parsing structured text input.
The scanner is great for processing data files that have a specific format, like CSV files or tab-delimited files.
All right, we've reached the final chapter in this first part of our deep dive, Chapter 11, Threads.
Threads, those mysterious and powerful entities that allow us to perform multiple tasks concurrently.
This chapter takes you on a journey into the world of multi-threaded programming in Java.
Multi-threading can be a challenging topic, but it's essential for building high-performance applications that can take advantage of modern multi-core processors.
They start by explaining the basic concepts of threads and how they work in Java.
Right, they cover things like creating threads, starting and stopping them, and managing their execution.
And they introduce different approaches to creating and managing threads, like using the thread class, thread pools, and the runnable and callable interfaces.
Thread pools are generally the preferred way to handle concurrency in modern Java applications.
They are. They provide a more efficient and manageable way to handle multiple threads, especially when you have a lot of short-lived tasks.
Right, they abstract away the complexities of a thread creation and destruction, allowing you to focus on the logic of your tasks.
And then things start to get really interesting and potentially dangerous when we talk about thread synchronization.
Ah, yes, synchronization, the art of coordinating the actions of multiple threads to avoid race conditions and other nasty surprises.
Race conditions occur when multiple threads try to access shared data at the same time, leading to unpredictable and potentially incorrect results.
It's like having multiple chefs trying to modify the same dish simultaneously without any coordination.
To prevent these culinary disasters, they introduced the synchronized keyword, which acts like a lock, ensuring that only one thread can access a synchronized block of code or method at a time.
Synchronized is like a bouncer at the door of a nightclub, only letting one thread in at a time.
Exactly. And to provide more fine-grained control over access to shared resources, they introduced the read-write lock interface.
The read-write lock allows multiple threads to read data concurrently while ensuring that only one thread can write at a time.
It's a more nuanced approach to synchronization that can improve performance in scenarios where you have a lot of readers and infrequent writers.
Right, and to wrap things up, they introduce thread local and the newer scoped value.
Thread local allows each thread to have its own copy of a variable preventing conflicts when accessing shared data, and scoped value provides a more modern way to manage data within a defined scope.
So they provide different ways to isolate data and prevent threads from interfering with each other.
All right, so that concludes our whirlwind tour of the first 11 chapters of Java Cookbook 5th edition.
Phew, that was a lot of information. But it's great to get a taste of what this book has to offer.
It is. We've covered a lot of ground, from the fundamentals to more specialized areas like object-oriented programming, functional programming, and concurrency.
It's amazing how much Java has evolved over the years and how it continues to stay relevant in the ever-changing world of software development.
I agree. It's a testament to the power and versatility of the language.
And I'm excited to see what else this cookbook has in store for us.
Me too. We've only just scratched the surface, and there's a lot more to explore, so stay tuned for part 2 of our deep dive into Java Cookbook.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We're picking up where we left off, exploring the world of Java programming with Java Cookbook 5th edition. That's right. Last time we covered some of the foundational aspects of Java, and now we're going to be looking at more specialized topics, starting with Chapter 12, Network Clients.
Perfect. Networking is everywhere, right?
It is, and Java's got a really solid set of tools for building network applications, from simple clients that talk to web servers to really complex distributed systems.
Yeah, it is pretty amazing what you can do. And this chapter focuses on the client side of things.
Exactly, like how to create Java applications that can actually reach out across the network and interact with servers.
It's all about making connections.
It is. They start with the basics, like, sockets, ports, and protocols.
So it's like learning the language of the internet.
Exactly, like the fundamental building block. And once you get those down, they walk you through actually using them. How to communicate with servers, how to handle different types of data.
Like sending text messages, images.
Right, all that good stuff. And they even cover how to handle network errors, because, networks can be a little finicky.
So making sure your clients are robust.
Exactly. And for those who need to make sure everything's super secure, they introduce SSL sockets.
Oh, for encryption and authentication, right?
Exactly. You don't want anyone snooping on your secret recipes.
Definitely not. Okay, so that's the client side. But what about when you need to be the one serving up the data? Chapter 13 covers servers.
Right. This is where things get really interesting. Instead of reaching out, you're the one waiting for connections.
Like setting up shop in the digital world.
That's a great way to put it. This chapter walks you through creating those server sockets and listening for incoming connections.
And of course, you need to handle multiple clients connecting at the same time.
Exactly. The chapter covers all those essential tools, making sure your server can juggle all those requests coming in.
Like a well-oiled kitchen.
Absolutely. They cover both text-based and binary protocols, so you can handle any kind of data exchange. And for those who really need to ramp up performance,
You need something a little more specialized, right?
right, they introduce non-blocking I/O.
That allows your server to manage lots of client connections at the same time, right?
Exactly, using a single thread. It's like having a super efficient chef who can manage a whole kitchen single-handedly.
Pretty impressive. So we've covered clients and servers, but now let's zoom in on the web specifically. Chapter 14 is all about web clients.
Yeah, the web is such a huge part of what we do these days. So this chapter dives into creating Java programs that can interact with web servers.
So we're talking about retrieving web pages, downloading files, that kind of thing.
Exactly. They start with the basics, like URLs and how to connect to web servers.
The essential ingredients for any web-based interaction.
Right. Then they show you how to actually send HTTP requests using those GT and POST methods.
So, being able to send data to the server, not just receive it.
Precisely. And since the web has so many different kinds of content,
We need to be able to handle it all.
right, they cover techniques for handling HTML, XML, JSON.
So you're ready for anything.
Exactly. And if you need to deal with things like cookies, they've got you covered with the Cookie Manager and HTTP cookie classes.
So it's all about creating a smooth experience for your users.
Exactly. Okay, so we've seen how to be a web client, but Chapter 15 flips the script and we become the web
We're
servers.
moving up in the world, becoming the providers of content.
That's right. This chapter guides you through building those servers that respond to requests.
So like setting up your own little corner of the web.
Precisely. And it starts with explaining how that all-important HTTP protocol works.
Because you need to know the rules of the game.
Exactly. Then they show you how to build simple web servers using the HTTP server class.
So serving up static content, right?
Right, like HTML files, images, that kind of thing.
A good starting point. But,
But what about when you need something more dynamic? That's where servlets come in.
oh right, servlets allow you to create content on the fly, tailored to the specific request.
Exactly. They give you so much flexibility. You can interact with databases, process form data, generate custom HTML.
It's like having a full-fledged web development studio at your fingertips.
And if you need some help managing the complexity of larger web applications.
That's where web containers come in.
Right. Think Tomcat or Jetty. They provide all the infrastructure you need to run your servlets and other web components.
Like the foundation of a web empire.
Exactly. Okay, moving on to Chapter 16, database access.
Databases are like the heart of so many applications.
They are, and Java's got you covered for working with them. This chapter focuses on relational databases.
So the kind of store data in tables with rows and columns.
Precisely. The chapter starts with the fundamentals, relational databases, and SQL.
SQL is the language we use to talk to these databases, right?
That's right. And once you've got the basics of SQL down, they introduce JDBC.
That's how we actually connect to the database from Java, right?
Exactly. JDBC provides all the tools you need to establish connections, send queries, and process the results. And there are a couple of different ways to go about it. They cover both the low-level JDBC techniques where you're writing your SQL directly,
And higher-level frameworks that simplify things.
exactly. Frameworks like Hibernate and JPA, the Java Persistence API.
Those frameworks provide a more object-oriented way of working with databases, right?
Precisely. It's called Object Relational Mapping, or ORM. Instead of writing raw SQL, you can work with Java objects, which is much more natural.
It's like having a translator that speaks both Java and SQL.
Exactly. But it's not all about relational databases. They also touch upon the growing world of NoSQL databases.
Right. Those are designed for different needs, like when you need to store really huge amounts of data.
Exactly. The Java Cookbook gives you the taste of both worlds, so you can pick the right database for your needs.
Speaking of different approaches, Chapter 17 delves into processing XML.
Ah, yes, XML. It's been around for a while.
It has, but it's still incredibly important for representing structured data.
Especially for exchanging data between different applications.
So it's like a universal language for data.
Exactly. The chapter starts with the basics of XML structure and then jumps into the different ways Java lets you work with it.
Okay, like what?
Well, there's XXSimple API for XML, which is really efficient for large documents.
So when you need to process things quickly,
Exactly. Then there's DOM, the Document Object Model.
that's a more structured approach, right?
Right. It lets you build a whole representation of the XML document in memory,
And finally, they cover Stacks, the streaming API for XML.
which is kind of a hybrid approach, combining the efficiency of XX and the flexibility of DOM.
Best of both worlds.
Exactly. The chapter shows you how to use all three so you can pick the right tool for the job. And they also cover XML validation.
Making sure your XML is well-formed and follows the rules.
Exactly. It's all about data integrity.
Okay, moving on to Chapter 18, JSON. It feels like JSON has taken over the world of data exchange these days.
It has, especially for web applications and APIs. It's just so simple and lightweight.
And easy to read, which is a big plus.
Absolutely. The chapter starts with, the basic JSON structure,
Objects, arrays, all that good stuff.
right? Then they introduce some powerful Java libraries for working with JSON.
Like what?
Well, two of the most popular ones are Jackson and JSON.
These libraries make it easy to convert between JSON data and Java objects, right?
Exactly. And they can also handle more complex tasks like dealing with nested data and ensuring everything is formatted correctly.
Sounds like essential tools for any modern Java developer.
They are. And speaking of modern development, let's move on to Chapter 19, Internationalization and Localization.
So, making your applications work for a global audience.
Exactly. This chapter is all about making your applications speak different languages and adapt to different cultures.
It's essential for creating truly inclusive software.
Absolutely. They cover a lot of techniques, from using resource bundles to formatting dates and numbers in a locale-sensitive way.
So, ensuring your application feels natural to users from all over the world.
Right. And now on to a topic that's crucial for any application. Chapter 20, Security.
Security. Always a hot topic.
It is, and Java gives you a lot of tools to work with.
But it could be a complex subject.
It can be. This chapter covers the fundamentals like authentication, authorization, and encryption.
So who can access what and keeping your data safe?
Precisely. And they walk you through different ways to implement these security features using Java's built-in mechanisms, as well as popular security libraries.
So you're well equipped to build secure applications.
They also discuss some of the common vulnerabilities you need to be aware of.
Oh, right. Like those SQL injection attacks.
Exactly. It's all about understanding the threats and knowing how to protect yourself.
All right, so that wraps up this section of our deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground. Networking, databases, working with different data formats, internationalization, and even security.
It's been a whirlwind tour of some really important areas of Java development.
I'm ready for the final leg of our journey. Welcome back to the deep dive. We're in the home stretch now, wrapping up our exploration of the Java Cookbook, 5th edition.
That's right. We've covered a lot of ground, from basic Java to more specialized topics. Now we're going to look at some really unique and powerful features, starting with Chapter 21, Java and Other Languages.
This chapter is all about how Java can work with other programming languages. It's like a polyglot programmer's dream come true.
Exactly. Sometimes you might need to use a different language for a specific task, or maybe integrate with some legacy code.
Right, Java's not an island.
Exactly. And the chapter starts by introducing JNI, the Java Native Interface.
That lets you call code written in other languages, right?
Right, like C or C++F. It can be super helpful for accessing system-level stuff that's not directly available in Java.
So it's like adding some special ingredients to your Java dish from another culinary tradition.
That's a great way to put it. And it's not just about C and C++. Java can also play nice with scripting languages like JRuby, Jython, and Groovy.
So you can add some dynamic scripting to your applications.
Exactly. It really opens up the possibilities. Now, moving on to Chapter 22, Packages and Packaging. Once you've written all this amazing code.
You need a way to organize it and share it with others.
Right. This chapter is all about putting your code into neat little packages and creating those distributable archives.
So it's like taking your culinary creation and packaging it up for delivery, making sure it arrives safe and sound.
Perfect analogy. They start by explaining packages, which are basically a way to organize your classes and interfaces.
Keeps everything tidy.
Exactly. Then they introduce jar files, Java archives.
Ah, JR files. Those are like zip files for Java code, right?
Precisely. They bundle up all your classes, libraries, and resources into a single file.
Makes it much easier to distribute and deploy your application.
The chapter shows you how to create those jar files and even how to make them executable so you can run them directly.
Very convenient. And for added security, they even cover signing JR files.
Right. Digital signatures help ensure that your code hasn't been tampered with.
Now, for a chapter that always seems to make people a little nervous, Chapter 23, Threaded I/O.
Yeah, this one can be a bit tricky. It's about dealing with input and output operations when you have multiple threads running.
It's like trying to cook a meal with several chefs working at the same time.
You need to be careful, or you'll end up with a mess.
The chapter starts by highlighting the potential problems, like blocking operations and race conditions.
Right, you don't want your threads getting in each other's way or corrupting data.
So how do we avoid these culinary catastrophes?
They introduce several techniques like non-blocking I/O and asynchronous I/O.
Those sound pretty advanced.
They can be, but the chapter does a good job of explaining them, and they also revisit the Java NIO API.
Right. That was introduced earlier for working with files.
Exactly. NIO is perfect for this kind of threaded I/O with its channels, buffers, and selectors.
Okay, we're in the final stretch now, and we've arrived at a chapter that always sparks curiosity. Chapter 24, Reflection.
Ah, reflection. It's like giving your Java code a mirror and letting it examine itself.
It's one of those features that seems almost magical.
It is pretty amazing. It allows your code to inspect its own structure and behavior at runtime.
So you can actually see what's going on under the hood.
Exactly. And you can even modify things. It can be incredibly useful for things like dynamic proxies or even generating code on the fly.
But with great power comes great responsibility.
Absolutely. Reflection can be tricky and potentially dangerous if not used carefully.
The chapter does a good job of highlighting both the power and the pitfalls of reflection, right?
It does. It shows you how to use it responsibly and safely, and they also discuss the performance implications.
Because reflection can be slower than traditional code, right?
It can be, so it's important to use it judiciously. Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the Java Cookbook, 5th edition. It's been quite a journey.
We've covered a lot of grounds, from the basic ingredients of Java to some really advanced techniques.
It's amazing how much you can do with Java and how it keeps evolving to meet the demands of modern software development.
This cookbook is a testament to the power and versatility of the language. I hope you've all enjoyed our deep dive into the Java Cookbook. Keep experimenting, keep learning, and keep cooking up amazing Java code. 2.28.5